Hello and welcome to another knitting pod. I'm Lena and I'm so glad you're here today. If you're a returning viewer, you know, or you might know, that I took a couple weeks off just by virtue of the end of my kids' school and the beginning of summer, and just my house has been very chaotic. Not a moment to sit and tape or even think about taping, but also it was just a very necessary little respite for me. I think sometimes we need breaks from even the things we love just to get refreshed, re-inspired, have something new and exciting to bring to you. So thank you, thank you, thank you if you are coming back. If you are new here, I hope you enjoy the next hour or so of chatting about making and life and books and all the good stuff we love to talk about here. So I'm so excited to be with you. As you can see, I finally have a finished garment for you. I feel like it's been a really long time since I had a finished object to share with you. So here is my Shizen Pullover by Eri Shimizu. I finished it maybe a week ago or less, but it has been so incredibly hot here in Boulder. I mean, unseasonably warm. We went from late winter to summer, like the middle of summer, in a week, and it's been honestly really awful. And I know so many of you probably live in much hotter climates than I do, so I'm not going to complain too much, but it has made it impossible to wear this garment in real life. So I have not road tested this garment. I haven't worn it out to dinner or lunch or anywhere because it is like 85 degrees outside. I knit this beautiful garment out of linen quill by Purl Soho in the colorway Reed Gray. I made the size small. I got gauge with, I believe, the needles recommended in the pattern, and I thought this was a beautiful match of yarn and pattern. It makes a very airy, beautiful garment that will still be very wearable and appropriate for cooler climates. But I feel like you could wear this out to dinner in the warmer months in the evening and not be roasting, because it is made at a very wide gauge in ribbing. So as you can see, it's fairly see-through, but really like not that see-through. I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised that I am just wearing like a bralette under this and not a full camisole, and it's fine to me. So that was a really pleasant surprise, honestly, because a lot of times I like the look of a shearer garment, or like not a shearer garment. I like the look of a fingering weight yarn knit at a very large gauge, which this is that kind of garment. Another garment that we all are familiar with is the ranunculus. It's very similar to me in that way. It has that same, airiness, but a lot of times you then have to wear a camisole under it. So this one somehow maintains its density and openness at the same time. And I really do think it's because of the ribbing. Ribbing, even once blocked out, I feel like it tends to want to come together. Especially like if you look at the sleeves, they look pretty dense as a fabric. It almost looks like it's stockinette, but it is 2x1 ribbing. The body, I've talked about this so much, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but the body is various types of ribbing, and it just is such a testament to how something so simple can be used to create such a unique piece. And this is what I love about knitting. This is what I love about the world of designers out there, is that everybody has their own creative spark and vision to bring something so unique to life. And I really, really love this piece. I'm going to insert a little couple of minutes of me talking about it while standing up, so you can get a better sense of the garment as it drapes on the body and what it looks like and all that good stuff. So stay tuned for that in a few minutes. I hope I don't repeat myself in terms of what I say on that. But two things real quick about it, about the garment. I used this garment like solidified. Every time I knit sleeves, I used to knit sleeves exclusively with magic loop. So if you're not familiar with that technique, if you're not a sweater knitter, you basically get a cord, like the longest cord you have, and you pull that cord out so that you've got kind of two small rows of knitting that are adjacent to each other, and then you're pulling out the cord, and so on each side you have a loop, and then you have to pull the loop through and flip the garment over, and round you go. This was, an alternative to double pointed needles, and I did that I loved magic loop for so long. However, it really does kind of slow you down because you have to pull that cord each time and flip your thing. And it's a very small thing, but nonetheless, I decided to give shorties a try at some point. I bought a set of ChiaoGoo shorties. It's the blue case. It's the US 4 to 8. And at the time, I had no idea what I was doing. At the time, I felt like it was a huge waste of money because they were at the time about $80, under $90, I'm sure. And when I got them and I tried to use them, I just could not master gripping such a short point. And I thought, oh my gosh, like what a waste. I'm so bummed I wasted $85 on this set I'm never gonna use. But I decided to keep at it. Just like anything else, with practice, things get easier. And over time, that short tip just became so second nature to me. And now I love knitting sleeves with my shorties. And for me personally, I almost just splurged and bought the smaller set of ChiaoGoo shorties that are like US 0 to 3. But then I realized I don't think I ever knit a true fingering weight sweater. Like this is fingering weight yarn held at a much larger gauge. So I have never needed a smaller or bigger needle than the US 4 to 8. So that blue bagged pack is just so amazing. And if you are going to try it, or you have them and have found the tips to be kind of annoying sometimes, especially because they come with 2-inch tips and 3-inch tips. I wish I had them right next to me, but I don't. The trick that I use is in my right hand, which is my dominant knitting hand, I use the 3-inch tip, and in the left hand, I use the 2-inch tip. Because really, the only grip you're managing is with your right hand, and so I'm able to get the smaller of like a really nice small circumference, and I'm not having to deal with pulling cords out or adjusting it or worrying about laddering. It's just like this perfect, nice, smooth experience, and I absolutely think you should give it a try. You can even buy just a single one if you don't want to invest in the entire set before knowing that you like it, or maybe you have a friend that has them and you can borrow them. I think it's really worth experimenting with. And the second tip I did want to share, because one of you gave me this tip and it changed my knitting life, was when you are knitting sleeves, or this tip came from someone when I was knitting a Stephen West shawl that was modular. She told me to put the whole piece in a bag, let me show you this bag. Just like any knitting bag like this. Put the whole piece in this and then just expose the sleeve or whatever part you're working on. And because even when you've got shorties, you have to move the whole piece in a circle. When you leave it all the fabric out, all the yarn gets twisted around the garment. It's a mess. If you put it in a bag and just expose what you're working on, you just turn the bag every time you need to turn your work, and it just keeps everything neat and untangled, and I just find it to be so much more of a pleasant knitting experience. So whoever had given me that tip, life-changing, thank you, and I use it when I knit sleeves. So I feel like I really cannot remember the last time I knit a proper sweater. So I hadn't knit sleeves in a while, and these sleeves just went so fast. Each one took me about a day and a half, the second one even faster, because there's no decreases. It's just a straight sleeve. And one of my things with long sleeve sweaters is I love when they're really long. Like I want them to be almost to my knuckles. I feel like it just looks elegant and fits the style I like. So I really wanted to make sure they were long enough, and they were. And it's just a really beautiful garment. So I think that's all. I like truly, well, hold on. Let me insert the video of me standing and talking about it, and then we'll finish talking about it on the couch and move on to other things. Okay, see you in a second. Okay, you guys, I just wanted to give you a quick shot of this standing up so you could get a fuller view of it. This is the Shizen Pullover by Eri Shimizu. It has this split hem. I made the back a hair longer so that because there was no short row shaping or anything, I wanted it to come. I figured if I made it longer, it would give the illusion of being the same length as the front, because obviously you have more of a curve in your bum, so you have to have the fabric to come over that. So I'm happy I did that. Honestly, I could have probably done a little bit more. As I'm standing here, I realize what a deep yoke this has and how kind of far away from my body this underarm is. So if you don't like that, I think maybe you make a smaller size, because this is the positive ease of the garment. Another thing, just so that you can see, is this seam is not directly under my bust. So honestly, I would have thought, and I guess if I pull it, it will land a bit lower, like where the underwire of a bra strap would be. But naturally it seems to lift. I'm fine with that. But again, if that is something that would bother you, I would take note of that before I started this garment. All in all, I really love it. We'll chat more about it on the couch, but I did want to give you a look at it. And if you can see that the back is the same, it has a V-neck in the back. And it's got that all over ribbing. And yeah, it's a really fun, versatile layering piece for summer, and something you could easily throw on in cooler months too. So we'll chat about it more. I'll see you back on the couch. Okay, I hope that helped you guys get a better sense of the garment. Overall, I enjoyed knitting this garment so much. It was so interesting, from the construction to the design details. It was like nothing I had ever knit, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I also think one of the reasons I love it is, for me personally, it strikes the perfect balance between looking very feminine, but also modern and boxy and kind of boyish. And that is a really difficult balance to strike. And I find very few garments that do that. Like, I think that the V-neck makes it look so feminine. Like if this was a boat neck or, you know, a round crew neck, I would never have knit it. But the fact that it has this very feminine neckline balances out how boxy the garment is, and I just really like it. Also, I will say, I know it is a very deep neckline, and deep and wide, especially because there's a good amount of positive ease. I think maybe like 10 inches of positive ease, or maybe more. But she does give you a different neckline that's a V but much narrower. So maybe like the depth of this necklace, the butterfly necklace, it's like that. So fear not if you like the sweater, but you're like, I would never wear something that deep and wide. She has you covered. I really loved her design. I thought it was crystal clear. However, I will say my friend Sharon wanted to cast it on and did, and she found it very confusing. So I don't know, maybe it's always like that, right? One thing for one person is very different for another, but I found it really clear and straightforward and fun and fast, and I'm really happy with it. I do have to say there's like this weird bubble thing happening right here. and I need to check it out when I take the sweater off to see if like maybe I wove in an end weird or something, because it's like if you see there's like this bubble here, and I think I'm being hyper nitpicky, but that is how we are with our own stuff. So yeah, very happy to have a finished object. Hoping it cools down enough to wear it. We're going out to dinner tomorrow night, so I would love to wear it, but honestly, I doubt it. It's been so warm, and when you live at a high elevation, the sun is just so incredibly intense when it's out in the summer, in the warmer months. Okay, well, that is my finished object of the week. I have several other things on the needles, but because we're catching up today after a really long break, I decided to just like talk about this and skip the other things on my needles and go straight to what I cast on a few days ago and just kind of what's been percolating in my mind as far as new knitting, especially because it is getting warmer, at least for us. If you are blessed enough to be going into cooler months, I'm very jealous because I love cool weather. But it is warm here, and so knitting shawls right now, which are the things on my needles, just doesn't feel as appropriate. They're fun for me to pick up when I feel like, but I really wanted a warmer weather garment on my needles. So it's so funny. While I was trying to figure out the warm weather garment that I wanted to knit, I think it took me 2 days of searching on Ravelry and just thinking and reflecting and pros and consing it in my head. And I just thought, you'd think this is the last thing I'm going to knit in my entire life. Like, that's how intensely I have to, contemplate this for some reason. And then other times I just have this like deep knowing and I just know what I want to cast on and I do it. But this time it was really hard to figure out. So I started with the fact that one of my favorite designer of short sleeves and tanks is Jessie May. I think she just fits that same category that I was telling you about this garment, where it's, a blend of feminine and modern. I'm not a huge lace person, or I just love the really well edited details, but often they can be really boring to knit. And, that open edge tee that I made, it kind of falls in that category where it's an incredible basic that is so wearable and beautiful and you love it when it's done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you love it while you're making it. And so I kind of feel like I've made everything warm weather of hers that I wanted to or felt interested in making right now. And then there's a kind of a group of designers that I honestly think they're friends. I know some of them are friends, but this last designer, I'm not sure. But Park Williams and James N. Watts, I know they're all friends with her, and they kind of have similar styles and aesthetics, a little more modern, a little more edgy sometimes. But there was one designer that I had not really explored, and that was Jacqueline Cieslak. That's her name, right? Cieslak? Now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, I wonder if I'm messing that up. I will put it in right here. But I hadn't really explored her design portfolio at all. And I have to say, once I started, I just became obsessed. Every single thing she has designed is so freaking gorgeous and spot on to the kind of stuff I love. And I just completely fell down the rabbit hole. Now, the ironic thing is that is not what I ended up casting on. And the reason was the piece I loved the most was the Bay Slipover, I believe it is called. I know there's 2 Bay pieces in this Bay collection. It was a pullover that was like dolman sleeves, and then a kind of short like half-length sleeve slipover, but they were both made in DK weight. And I was really trying to use up some fingering weight yarn that I have, because here's the deal. The more I knit, the more I realize over the years, I have realized picking the right yarn used to just be like, oh, I love that sweater, I want to make it, and I love this color, so I'm just going to make it. It's worsted, she requires worsted, let's go. Over the years, I have realized that there's so much more that goes into getting the garment that you want. For instance, when you look at that picture and there's something you like about it, in this case, I like the oversized drape of the Bay Slipover. And that came from the fact that she used a blend. I don't know exactly what it was, but I'm sure it was linen or cotton or silk, something that has a drapiness and just does not look like typical merino. A merino or a blend of wool of some sort is going to have a different look than the look that you fell in love with. And that I have finally figured out. So I have nothing in my stash that is heavier weight yarn that is a cotton or linen or silk blend. So I really did not want to go out and buy more yarn. I feel like I have so much yarn right now and I really want to use what's in my stash. So I was heartbroken after falling in love with these pieces. Like, so well done. And what I love about her is if you go to her website, I think it's under the blog section of her website, and say you fell in love with the Bay Pullover. On that website, she shows you samples of every single size on a person in real life that knit that garment. And I just thought that was so brilliant, because if you are a 32-inch bust, and in the pictures it shows someone with a 48-inch bust, it's really hard to get a sense of that garment on your body, or vice versa. If you have a bigger bust, and the picture is of someone, that's really flat chested or whatever, it's just hard to project yourself into that garment. On her blog, you just got to see everything so clearly. And then it had a link to Ravelry. I just thought it was done so well. And in her patterns, in the notes, it said, she has options to add, how to add bust darts and how to modify for your body in this way and that way. And I just thought it was so incredibly thoughtful and respectful of how wide a variety of, because like, as someone with a very kind of straight 34-inch bust, that still doesn't translate to everybody who's 34 inches that they look the same. Our bodies are all so unique, and I love that, and we should be celebrating that. And she does a really good job of celebrating the uniqueness of everybody. So even, I believe she had like several people in the same size with different body types. So even if you're a 2 and you're not necessarily this type of 2, you could find someone that looked like a little bit more like you to figure it out. Anyway, I'm blathering on and on. I really fell in love with Jacqueline Cieslak. I cannot wait to have cooler weather, because I will undoubtedly knit one of her sweaters or pullovers or whatever. I just couldn't find the right combination in this moment of fiber and pattern for warm weather. Like her warmer weather things, it just didn't work out. But I had to share her with you. I'm sure you've heard of her. She kind of had a moment at some point. I think she's a garment designer also, like for sewing. I don't know. She's very talented, really cool. Check her out. I think if you like versatile garments that you buy a pattern and you could see yourself making that pattern a couple of times in different colorways, or like even the one I loved, the Bay, you could totally make it in a wool if you were wanting a more structured kind of wintry garment. I just really liked the way she looked in this drapey piece, and I'm gonna put a picture up. It just looks so beachy and lovely, and I liked it so much that I wanted that look. So in the future, I'm definitely going to try to look for some yarn that would fit that. I know Ritual Dyes just came out with, I don't know how to pronounce this word, Undine DK. They had an Undine regular fingering or sport. I think it's a cotton linen blend, and it's a beautiful summer weight fiber. Really gorgeous colorways. Ritual Dyes just does unbelievable colorways. You guys know, if you've watched my channel, that I got this yarn jewel weed from them. It's not the colorways jewel weed. The yarn is Maven, and it's a non-superwash 100%, I don't remember the fiber content, but it's wool, but a very rustic wool. And I really wanted to use this for one of the Bay pieces, but I just knew, again, that it wasn't going to knit up the way I wanted it, because especially a non-superwash yarn, it's not going to have, it's great for something like cables or something fun like that, but like it's gonna have the body to hold that, but something with drape, like you're much better off with something else. So anyway, long story short, yarn choice is so important. And I think even as I learned to spin and take those spinning classes on Craftsy, you just realize like there's a place for a single ply, there's a place for a 3-ply, there's a place to add superwash. You know, it's just, you need to have the awareness. And sometimes it's like, we're so hell-bent on the color choice. Like, oh my God, I love this color and I want to use this color for this. But it's going to be disappointing to you sometimes at the end, because it's not going to fit on your body exactly how you want. Anyway, okay. So if I did not cast on Jacqueline Cieslak, what did I cast on? I cast on a pattern I have loved for years. It is the Garter Glide Tee by James N. Watts. It is a really fun piece. I'm going to put up pictures so you can see it before I show you what I've knit up so far. It is, again, a V-neck. I'm so predictable, but I'm a sucker for a V-neck, and it's oversized. Also a sucker for that. And there's no purling in sight, you guys. And I am not averse to purling at all. The more I purl, the quicker I get at it, the smoother I get at it, the more confident I get at it. However, I'm not gonna lie, purl will never be the knit stitch, okay? Knit stitch is why we love knitting. It's just, it has this ease and flow and rhythm, and I love knitting more than I love purling. I'm sorry, Purl, I love you, but knitting always will have my heart. And there's no purling in this piece. It's called the Garter Glide, so go figure. But what sold me on it was just that summery, he just nails the summer vibe of it without, sometimes it's almost like a contradiction in terms that you're knitting a summer piece, right? But even though the yarn I'm using is a wool blend, it just feels like it's gonna all work. So let me show you without further ado, because I have been talking without showing you knitting for too long. I'm out of the practice of podcasting. I apologize. Please do not judge me too harshly. My yarn is tangled. Here is the front panel of my Garter Glide tee. Isn't it beautiful? If you have been with me, you know these are the leftovers of the 12 birds MCAL that we did with Helen Stewart. I had so much left over because I pivoted from the 24 birds, which needed 4 skeins of fingering weight, to the 12 birds, which needed half of all that. So I have so much left. I just joined this new ball. So this is like the entire cake of Farmer's Daughter fibers. This is the Foxy Lady base. The colorway is Meet Me in Atlantic City. I fell in love with this colorway. If you've been here, I will spare you the going on and on about it, but just look at those tones in there. It's so pretty, and it strikes such a lovely balance between color and still like moody, and I love it. Sometimes, you guys know that I love knitting with color. It gives me energy and life, and I feel different when I'm knitting with color. But a lot of times I don't want to wear the really bright colors that I love to knit with. This was struck the balance between colorful and toned down enough to be very versatile and wearable for me. So I am just loving knitting this. You guys, I cannot tell you how much I love this garment. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble lifting it. So let me talk to you a little bit about the construction. It is knit flat and seamed together, and that is what enables you to not have to purl, right? Because if you're going to do garter stitch in the round, you're going to have to alternate knits and purl rows. When you're doing garter stitch flat, it's all knitting. So yes, you do have to seam the sides together at the end, but it is no big deal. I have seamed tops, and it is honestly fun and goes by so fast. And if you've never done it, it's a great skill to have in your back pocket. So do not let seaming be something that scares you off, because it's fun, it's easy, and it is a skill you just need to have as a garment knitter. So the garment is cast on with this tiny little sleeve, and then you add a lot of stitches for the body, and then you knit flat for a decent amount of time. Then you start decreasing for the V-neck. Then you do the basically mirror image of that onto the other side. And I am almost done with this panel, and then I'll bind off and do the little cap sleeve on this side. I added a ton of length to the body. I think I added 30 extra stitches. I do not want a cropped tee, and for the size I was knitting, I think I'm making a small. I think the extra small was 40 inches, and the small was 44, and I am like about a 34 inch bust, but I really like 10 inches of positive ease. So I could have, if you wanted to size down for a less flowy garment, you could totally do that. But I wanted a nice, loose, not appropriately, that's not the word I was looking for, a length that would make me feel comfortable. And I have found I tend to think I have enough length, and I never do. So I actually added way more stitches. Like I think my total stitch count was like 70 something, but then I ripped it all back and started over because I thought it was going to be too long. So I'm really hoping when I hold it up to my body, it feels long enough. And then you have to kind of factor in when you wet block, it relaxes. And this is a superwash wool and silk blend, so I think it will stretch a little bit. I should have done, if I was responsible, I would have like really measured. That's what you should do when you gauge swatch, is wet block it and then measure the difference. That will give you a much better idea, but I did not do that. And I don't want to say it's because I was lazy. It's because I didn't think about doing that until right this very second, but I should have done it. So maybe if you're going to do it, you should do that. But I'm really hoping that the length is enough. Now, the only comfort I have is that if it's still not enough, I will pick up stitches along the bottom and add a horizontal band at the bottom to add length. But I really don't want to do that. I love the look of an unfinished hem. I think that kind of unfinished look on a casual, oversized piece looks so pretty in this effortless way. And it's just a really nice look. And I don't want a horizontal band at the bottom. But a horizontal band at the bottom would be the lesser of two evils between awkwardly short and the look I'm going for. So we'll see. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But this is mind-blowing to me. This is 2 days of knitting. I've knit this in 2 days, and it's a fingering weight yarn. And I think I got gauge with a size 7 needle. So it's a 4.5 millimeter. I know I went up a size to get gauge. And again, I know we're also resistant to gauge swatching because we're excited. We're ready to jump in and start the garment. We don't want to swatch and then block it and then wait and then have to rip it out and try again with another needle size. I know all that. I feel you. But let my past mistakes warn you against skipping gauge swatching because it's everything. Again, just like you need to make an educated yarn choice to get the garment you want, you need to gauge swatch. If I hadn't and I had just been like, oh, it's oversized anyway, I'm just gonna go with what he says, it'll work out, it's fine. I was way off. I think I had 4 more stitches per 4 inches, which is gonna make a substantially different size. And number 2, Andrea Mowry has said this before on her podcast, and she's so right. It's not just about hitting the right number of stitches, it's about the fabric. Do you like the fabric this created? And when I had way too many stitches, like the stitches were too small, it made such a dense fabric, even though this is a single ply yarn, I didn't like it. And when I went up, it felt like the vision of the garment that he had in designing it. And I think, again, when you look at a picture and you fall in love with the way it looks, it's not just pick a yarn and knit it. You have to try to match up all those factors that are gonna lead to the garment looking the way you want. And I have found the more I do that, the more fun it becomes. It almost becomes like a little puzzle where you're trying to match all the pieces to get the picture you want, rather than just like, oh, it'll all work out. And then you're just like, God, I wasted like a month of my life on that sweater. And it's, I mean, oftentimes way more than a month. This thing, I feel like I'm gonna finish in a week because I can't put it down. It's so much fun. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but in the summer, just a different energy in my life. Like, I don't know whether it's warmer air or longer days, more sunshine, more kids in my day. I just feel like I want lightness in my life. And this garment is just like, it's not boring, but the shaping and stuff is just the perfect balance of being interesting, but not hard, easy to keep track of. I don't know. I am loving this garment. After 2 days of trying to figure out what to knit, I really feel like I am knitting what I want to be knitting, and I'm just loving it. It is so much fun. In his sample, he's done like a color blocked version, which is super cute, and you could just do an infinite variety of color combinations. My favorite one was this girl who did this tee in like a really, I'll put a picture up. I think it was like a very light shell color, and it was one color, very simple, but it had the raw edge, and she just looks stunning and so feminine, but just like a feminine that's not trying too hard. It's just so cute. That's what I would love to make. Like, I think it would make a beautiful, like using linen quill would be beautiful. So many ways to use what you have in your stash. I really wanted to make it out of this and only this color. I wanted it to just be a clean, one color, no color blocking situation. But because I added so much length, I was really worried that I wouldn't have enough of this. I had like a ball and a half. Rather than risk running out of yarn on the back panel, I decided to use this middle panel. I used the colorway olive oil. I had a whole bunch of that, so, you know, why not just throw it in? And what I like about it is it is solid, but it's very well matched with the tone of this variegated yarn, so it doesn't break up the simplicity of that line too much. I'm gonna probably do the collar in that also, and if I have to do a bottom hem, I don't know. We'll revisit that if that comes to that. I wasn't sure, like when I cast on, I was going to do it all in this, and it was only when I added all those stitches to the bottom that I realized, oh, I might not have enough yarn. So if I could go back, I would have done this little sleeve detail in that solid color as well, but it's okay. It doesn't really matter. What else about this garment? Oh, I don't know what it is about garter stitch vertically that is so different than garter stitch horizontally. When I made my daughter's half and half wrap, which is all garter stitch also, I told you guys, I realized I row out a lot in garter stitch, and that's such a unexpected twist for me. I always thought people tended to row out in stockinette where it's knitting one way and purling the other, just because knitting and purling require different amounts of yarn and we tend to have different tension. But I was so surprised that I row out in just knit back and forth. Who knew? No idea why. I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. Like if you were listening to an audiobook and it's really like a tense thing and you're like kind of gripping it just a hair tighter, the tension of those stitches is going to be a little different. So you can see, if you look closely, there are places where I have stitches that are not exactly the same size. For some reason, to me at least, in the vertical orientation, it's just less obvious than when it's horizontal. I don't know. So it doesn't bother me. And I know that when I wet block it, a lot of that will kind of even out a little more. And regardless, I really, really, really like the way vertical garter looks. It's just so unique. Gives you such a different look. It's just these small details just make such a difference. And I really am enjoying this piece. I could not recommend this enough. Whatever your jam, and like, we were talking about yarn choice, I really do think you could get away with using a wide variety in this garment. Like this is, I think 25% silk, 75% wool, and it's a single ply. So by virtue of all that, it's going to be very drapey. You could use a cotton, 100% linen. You could use eucalyptus, which I'm super curious to try out. I have not tried it out. But just so many fun opportunities to use up what you have. I think this would be really pretty in Noro, if you have a thinner Noro yarn, because it just also has that very natural look, and this garment just feels very summery and natural. So anyway, that is the Garter Glide tee by James N. Watts. He has so many fun patterns, you guys. I really enjoyed going down the rabbit hole of looking for what I wanted to knit, because you can really dive into all the different possibilities, and it makes you feel like you could knit all day, which I know I could. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm so out of the practice. My throat is so dry from all the talking. You can hear there's ice in my cup because it's that warm, and we were walking the dogs and we barely made it a mile because it's so warm, and my Great Pyrenees is so furry. I just feel so sorry for her in this heat. It's really rough. I wanted to share a gift that my sweet cousin sent me. She went to a fiber festival near where she lives in Minnesota, and she picked up some gorgeous fiber for me to spin, because she has been giggling at my new obsession with spinning. Is this not so gorgeous, you guys? I cannot wait to spin this. I am currently spinning still some practice fiber, but I cannot tell you how much better it is looking. I'm working on getting a really fine ply so that I could ply two together to get closer to a fingering weight. And once I manage to feel more confident in that, I'm going to spin this into hopefully something that's like fingering sport weight. And I really want to knit the traveler hat. She and I wanted to knit that together, and I would love to knit this into that, because look how pretty. Wouldn't this be the prettiest hat? Oh my gosh. But when you are going to spin your own fiber, it just adds a whole nother step. Now I have like fiber on my eyelash, and that's going to bother me. But look at those colors. It's so pretty. It is Leicester long wool sheep, Berry Hill Farm. And I love that. I think, they raise the sheep, they dye it. It's just so fun when you get to have fiber that's from a small farm rather than, ordering it from some website where you're just getting you don't know the origin of it. I don't know, it makes it feel so special. So thank you for that to my cousin. Other than that, I've been really good. I have not procured any new yarn because I really need to work through my stash, and I'm going to. There's no pressure. It's just there's so much yarn that I just have to find the right project. Like that jewel weed yarn, it's so tricky because I only have 3 skeins, and that is, I think, 600 yards or something like that, maybe a little more, 650 yards, something like that. And I'm thinking I might make a Sari Nordland like cabled vest slipover. I love the word slipover. It just sounds so much more elegant and elevated than the word vest. I don't know. I don't like the word vest. But anyway, that has nothing to do with this. But I think that non-superwash fiber, it's the base is Maven. I think it'll be beautiful with some cables. And then I could wear it as like a sleeveless top in the summer and with a long sleeve top in the winter. So anyway, that is for another day. But I'm dying to use that red yarn because it just feels like, again, I just want to knit with something colorful in this weather. Okay, enough of that. Let's wrap up the knitting and let's talk about life and books and shows. I've missed talking to you guys about this stuff so much because I've been lucky enough to have some lovely books and stuff coming through my life. And like I said earlier, I don't know what it is, but the change of season has just made me want to lean towards more levity in my life. I think I tend to be very serious in terms of the things I read and listen to and watch. And I don't know, I like having thought-provoking material. But sometimes I think it's okay to just take a moment and follow what the feeling is. What do you feel like what is calling you? Like even in my workouts, there are days lately that I don't want to bang it out and be all sweaty and have my heart racing. I just feel like doing something with lighter weights or more stretchy or, and in the past, I'm like, no, that's not okay. I need to do what I need to do and just start and keep going. And I don't know what, lately I've just been trying to listen to what I want. And it just feels so much better. I feel like we all have this knowing of what we need. And when we ignore it, that voice just gets louder and more discontented. And so I'm really enjoying the lighter side of things right now. The book that just gave me life, and I cannot recommend enough. I'm so sad I finished it because it was so good. And I would totally re-listen to it. It was that good. It is You Are Here by David Nicholls. Okay. He wrote this book years ago, like maybe 20 years ago now, called One Day. I remember I was like at the very beginning of law school, so I had to be in my early 20s. So if that was a long time ago, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, I loved that book so much. It was my favorite book. I loved it. It was everything. Like it was funny. It was like the writing was super zippy, but in a very real, authentic voice. I loved the storyline. I loved the romance and the love story of it. I loved that book. And he wrote a couple of books after that I read, but didn't have that same just for. When I heard he was coming out with a new book, I had a lot of pressure on this book, y'all. I was like, oh my God, waiting till the day it came out. And the day it came out, I like downloaded it and started it that day. And it did take me a little bit to get into it. In fact, I actually had to start it over because I was listening to it on audio, and the British accent can be a little tricky sometimes, especially when they speak quickly. I think any accent, when they speak quickly, can be tricky to acclimate to. And that's how I felt. So I definitely, I think like an hour in, I was like, I feel like I'm missing a lot of this. I need to start over. And I'm so glad I did because it was amazing. It was just such the perfect summer read for me because to me, I can't go too light because if it starts to feel like frivolous, I can't stay engaged. This was like just the right balance between lighthearted, but also the characters had depth and struggle, and it was just beautiful. I laughed so hard. I felt deep emotions. It was just the perfect summer read. Please, if you were looking for a book like that, so worth it. I hope you read it and I hope you like it as much as I did. I just fell in love with the characters. I felt like I could relate to them so well because they are like these socially awkward people that are so delightful. I'm going to claim both social awkwardness and being slightly delightful because I do think I am good company, but I am incredibly socially awkward. And I just felt really like so. I could have been a character in that book because I'm just such a hot mess, especially the female character who just tends to like say absurd things when she's uncomfortable. And that is so me, you guys. So, not to just, I'm not leaving the books completely, but we went back to Dallas for my nephew's graduation. And, you know, it's just so interesting when you go back to the place you lived for a long time. You know, it's just an interesting ride. And there were so many moments where I kind of had those feelings of social awkwardness. And this book just made you feel like you're just so not alone. And whenever I feel like I'm so confident when I'm alone or when I'm just with my people that know me really well and I don't have to pretend or try in any way. But when I'm like put in a different situation socially, sometimes I just feel so filled with self-doubt and self-criticism and all these negative things. And I just feel like this book just nailed that and made me feel like, oh my God, it's so not me. It's so everybody feels these ways. Some of us are just more practiced or better at blending into those new situations. And some of us just feel like we stick out like sore thumbs and that we put our foot in our mouth all the time. But regardless, it was a fabulous read. Could not recommend it enough. 10 out of 10. Loved it. So it was very hard to find something to read after that. I feel like there's always a lot of things that come out in the summer, lots of new books. But I was trying to find something on Libby from the library because I felt like guilty that I just like didn't want to spend on another book when I binged that book so quickly. So I am reading right now Big Summer by Jennifer Weiner. I have read some of her stuff in the past, very light, kind of chick lit, which I am here for. But this one is not, it's okay. I think I'm enjoying it, but it's not like, I'm not obsessed with it in the way I was obsessed with You Are Here. I've also read one of hers in the past called Mrs. Everything, as in MRS period, everything. That one was really, really good. I loved that book. So if you are looking for a Jennifer Weiner recommendation or something that you might be able to find at the library, because it's been out for a few years, highly recommend Mrs. Everything. It would be a really fun summer read. Big Summer is okay. I'm getting through it. I don't know if I'll stay with it. If I really want to read Ruth Reichel's new book called Paris something. I can't remember what it's called. But I've got a couple of her backlog in my Libby that should be coming up. So if that comes up, I might scrap Big Summer. When I'm reading something from the library, I don't hesitate to just pull the cord and bail because I feel like you should love what you're reading. And if you're halfway through and you're not loving it, move on. There's too many books in this world, just like there's too many knitting patterns that we can't get through in this lifetime. Life is too short. There's too many things to read. If you're not loving it, kick it to the curb and find something better. On a completely polar opposite note, I'm also reading Between Two Kingdoms by Suleika Jaoud, but I'm reading it the physical copy. I heard her interviewed somewhere. I'd never heard of her, and I just fell in love with her voice and her story. She is diagnosed with leukemia at a very, very young age, like at 21 or 22, and this is her memoir of that time. And I know it sounds very dark, but it's so beautiful and so hopeful, and just it's like the complete opposite of what I was saying about lightness and all that, but I'm enjoying reading it because it's slower and I can just like read it in small chunks, and I don't know, it's just a really nice balance to the lightness of the other things I'm drawn to right now. So if you are looking for a heavier read recommendation, nothing heavier than a memoir about cancer. What else? What else? As far as shows, because the kids are not in school, they're very busy, but they're not in school. So even though they have extremely busy days, when they come home, there's no homework. It's just a much chiller pace of life in terms of evenings, and I'm loving it because I don't have to stay on them. Like, did you work on this? Did you work on that? Did you study for this? So they come home and they're just exhausted. So after dinner, we've been watching shows together, and we finally finished Modern Family. We watched the whole series as a family, and it was such a joy, and they loved it so much. I think it's just so easy to forget that kids live in an adult world. And to watch a show about a family where many of the characters are their age or thereabout is so fun for them to see the humor of a 12-year-old or whatever. And I can't recommend it enough. It's so bonding to watch shows with your kids. And it's chill. You can knit. You can just sit there and veg, and you're still bonding, you guys. You're still bonding. And then, in your regular life, you're like referencing the show and making jokes and laughing. And I think it cannot be overstated or understated. Anyway, I cannot emphasize enough how important I think it is to have those things where you have these jokes and experiences in common, and you're not just parenting them from like a clean your room, fold your clothes, do your laundry. Like, you're laughing about stuff. That is, to me, something that no one talks about. Watch shows with your kids that make both of you laugh, because it's important. You don't need to watch Pokemon with them unless that's your jam. But like a comedy like Modern Family, it was just so much fun. So after that show was over, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sad. That was like 8 seasons. So we didn't have to think about what we were watching together. So we started watching Young Sheldon. It is on Netflix, and oh my gosh, it is so cute and charming and funny and lovable, and I love it so much. The kids love it, everybody's laughing, and it's so good. You have to watch it if you haven't. Annie Potts plays the grandmother. She is like my grandma idol, okay? She's so good, and like, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my God, the word just slipped out of my mouth. Darn it. It's going to come to me like in the middle of the night. It's going to drive me crazy. Irreverent. Boom. She is so irreverent in this show, and I love it. She is grandma goals for me. I just love her so much. If you watched Designing Women back in the day, she was on Designing Women, and she looks the same. I don't know how. And speaking of Designing Women, we also finished the season 2 and season 3 of Hacks, which has Jean Smart, who is also in Designing Women. 6 degrees of separation here. But anyway, Hacks was so good. We had watched the first season a couple years ago, or whenever it came out, maybe a year ago. I didn't realize there was a season 2. So we missed the season 2, and we binged 2 and 3, and highly recommend it also. Not for kids, but so good. And Jean Smart is one of my favorite actresses of all times. We've talked about this before. Some of you also remembered when she was Frasier's girlfriend, and hilarious, but she is an absolute hoot on Hacks. So please watch Hacks. It is excellent. And I cannot tell you how much I love seeing these older women just killing it in these roles. And it's giving me life. Love it. Okay, that was all the shows. Mod Fam, Hacks, Sheldon, Young Sheldon. The last thing I will share, and then I'm going to let you go. It's been an hour. But you knew this was going to be a long episode, that I had all sorts of things to share with you. Last thing I wanted to share was something that just brought me so much delight, because it was a memory that I was having that translated into my current life in the most just lovely way. So let me just bear with me while I share this with you. When I was growing up, I grew up in Texas, but my mom's brother and his family lived in Bombay in India, and I was an avid dancer. I did Indian classical dance, and in the summers when I was like a young teenager, I would go back, my mom and I would go back to India, and we'd stay there for several months with my cousin's family, and I would take dance lessons with a teacher there. And it was truly one of the best times of my life. Like if I'm in the dentist chair, like filled with anxiety, having to like mentally transport to a happy place, that's one of my happy places. Like those months of staying with them and spending time with my cousins and dancing and just, I loved it so much. It was one of the happiest times of my life. And I don't know why I was having this vivid recollection of reading Archie comic books in my uncle's flat those summers. I was obsessed with Archie comics, and I would just devour them. And there was no Kindle, there was no, download the digital version onto your iPad back in the Stone Ages, as my son would say. He always is like, how was it in 1840 when you were in high school? And we laugh because it's hilarious to be old. But anyway, there was no way to get more. So I would just like read them. And my uncle would take me to this bookstore, and they would, I don't know why the store, I don't remember if it was a bookstore or just a store, but they had like a lending library, and they would get Archie comics, and he would make sure to always bring one home for me or ask them or take me, and we would always get Archie comics from that store. And my uncle would like work so hard to make sure I had them. I just feel like choked up thinking about this memory, because it was just, this time in my life that's so never going to be recreated, right? Like this time when my grandma was still alive, and like it was just this beautiful moment in life where my cousins and I would spend all this time together and get to live in these small quarters together, and it was just absolutely beautiful. Anyway, fast forward to now, NBA Finals. I am such a huge basketball fan. Because of my son, I have become a huge basketball fan. And it's one of the things I love doing with my son is watching him play, talking about basketball, watching college basketball, watching professional basketball. And right now it's the NBA Finals. And I love the Celtics, so I'm rooting for the Celtics. But my daughter, who does play basketball, but is not into watching the men's finals right now. So she gets very bored, and I've been trying to brainstorm because I love it. I love doing this stuff together as a family. I don't want to just have her upstairs watching TV or doing Legos or something. I want it to be like at least she's in the room. And I had this flash. I couldn't get the Archie comics out of my head. So I was like, oh my God, she would love these. Because she loves the Big Nate. She loves the Big Nate comic books, which I think are super absurd, but she's always reading them. She's a big reader, like loves reading everything. But right now, she's been reading these stupid Big Nate comics over and over and over. So I had this complete flash of realization that she needs these Archie comics. So I went on Amazon and I bought the old school Archie comics, like a pack of 10 or 12. And I got them. And when the game came on yesterday, I told her the story and I gave her this pack of Archie comics, and she is obsessed. Literally walking, like literally I told her, don't fall down the stairs because she is walking and reading these Archie comics. And just for me to like read them again, it just brought back all these memories, and they're unchanged. And I'm not even kidding. They are, some of it is so like politically incorrect and just absurd, but it's just so delightful and I love it so much. And the fact that I have these strong memories and now she's just like whole hog into it, it's been this full circle moment and this really lovely sharing of something that's so random. So whatever, when you have those things from your childhood, try to find them and share them with your kids or your grandkids or your nieces and nephews, because there's so many things that were amazing when we were young that are totally lost to these kids now. And I love it when I find something analog, right? Like not digital, not on an iPad, not a video game, nothing fancy, just an old-fashioned comic book that you can just be obsessed with and read cover to cover 1,000 times. So you're welcome. Caitlin, I feel like you need to get them for your daughter with the dental stuff. I feel like it'd be the perfect thing to cheer her up when she's like got anesthesia mouth and stuff like that. But anyway, I had to share that anecdote with you because it was just filling my heart with joy. So it's the same cousin that sent me this and that I was talking to you about. We want to knit the traveler hat together. So anyway. Okay, I'm officially exhausted and talked out, and I'm sure you're listened out. So thank you for bearing with me today on all the various things that have happened since we've been apart. But I will see you next week for sure. I hope you're having a fabulous summer. I hope it's not too hot where you are, because it's too hot for me where I am. But God bless air conditioning. So I will see you next week. Bye.